So Funny Games is a cult classic movie from director Michael Haneke, who is a great director behind movies like Caché, The White Ribbon, and Happy End most recently. And this is a director who is sort of like a once-in-a-generation talent. He's an incredibly talented, visionary type director. He's amazing. Almost everything he's done has been nearly flawless. But Funny Games really stands out to me as something truly spectacular and truly genre-bending, mainly because Funny Games is a movie about movies. And I'm not talking about the 1997 version, I'm talking about the 2007 version. Yes, there are two versions of the movie, both directed by the same man, and both are essentially the exact same. They're made with the same script, they're made shot for shot identical, they are almost literally the same movie.
Sorry to disturb you, I'm staying next door. I saw you earlier at the gate.
Oh yeah, of course.
So the reason I'm talking about the 2007 version is because Michael Haneke made the 2007 version, Funny Games US, because the movie is about US movies, more specifically US thrillers. And that is what this whole movie is about. It is essentially a deconstruction of thriller movies. US, specifically thriller movies. If you don't understand or have a knowledge of this genre of filmmaking, then this movie will not only not appeal to you, but it will just simply not make sense to you, because it takes all those plot points and all those things I've described from this genre and subverts them in a way that's incredibly interesting and incredibly upsetting. And that will not work, and that will not come off if you don't understand that. So, let's get into it. This movie starts very slow. The whole movie is slow, for that matter. Michael Haneke's pacing is typically incredibly slow, but the first 20 minutes of this movie is literally worthless, for lack of a better word. There is nothing really that happens. There isn't any character development. There is no plot. There is literally just long takes of people talking about nothing. It is such a bare bones start to the movie that most people, I can say, will see this and say, this is boring. But the thing is, that's purposeful. Just like everything else in this movie, the beginning being so bland and so boring is exactly what Michael Haneke wants. Because most movies like this, most home invasion horror movies, do this thing where the first 10, 15, 20 minutes is just boring nothing. It's bland characters, bland location setup, bland setup that goes nowhere. And he uses that to make it seem like you're getting into another one of those. Like, oh, we're just going to get this out of the way really quick. And it plays it really straight. This movie plays this type of plot really straight at first. And then you see our first incident when the two villains come over to the house of our main characters and swipe out Tim Roth's leg with a golf club. But it's executed in a way that when you first watch it, you go, oh, that's a little awkward, because you don't see Tim Roth's leg get taken out by this golf club. It's framed where Tim Roth is just walking, and then suddenly you see the golf club for half a second, and he hits the ground. And what you're left with is open to interpretation. Did he hit him with the club at the knee, at the shin, at the ankle? It doesn't matter. All that matters is that that violence happened off screen, and this happens throughout the movie. Any violent act that happens in this movie majorly happens off screen, except for one event which we'll get into a little bit later, which is sort of the staple of this movie, the thing that everyone knows, the TV remote scene.
It's a golf ball. But why do I have it in my pocket? The lady knows why. Because... well... because you didn't hit it. Correct.
So after the villains take out the leg of Tim Roth, they begin their home invasion. They begin what typically happens in these home invasion movies as the invaders getting into the homes. Just a very bare bones start to the story. Except this time, again, just like the rest of the movie, there's a twist to it. Because they start addressing the audience.
They don't want to bet.
Well, it's not an option. There has to be a bet. I mean, what do you think? You think they stand a chance? Well, you're on their side, aren't you?
Now, this isn't the first time it happens. It happens a little bit earlier when one of our villains simply looks at the camera, but now we're full on having a fourth wall break where one character in the movie is directly addressing the audience. And this is amazingly jarring. When you first watch this movie without knowing that this is going to happen, this happens and it completely throws you through a loop. And the rest of the movie is like this as well. It has self-referential humor, it has dialogue that's incredibly meta, and it has just straight up fourth wall breaks, and of course the TV remote scene, which again we'll get into in a minute. But this scene is important because it establishes the stakes of this movie. He talks to the audience and says, let's set a wager. And it is in sort of this fiction versus reality break, where the first act of a movie, again, is typically the setup, and then this middle point between Act 1 and Act 2 is the inciting incident, when things start to happen, when the plot starts to get underway. Something happens to send our characters off on the plot. And this little part where our villain says, what do you think, audience? Do you think they'll make it by the end? Is sort of what the inciting incident is referring to. Whenever an inciting incident happens in a movie especially like this, you're sort of left to think, who's gonna make it at this point? When the home invaders come into the movie, you automatically make a subconscious wager with yourself who you think's gonna die, who you think's gonna live. And this is what it refers to, this fourth wall break. And it is so incredible, and I absolutely love it.
You bet that you'll be alive tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and we bet that you'll be dead. Okay?
But from here, the movie sort of just plays out exactly like a home invasion. Someone gets away, you think that they might go get help, but no, they're thwarted and brought back to the house by one of the villains. And then something incredibly shocking happens, and again it happens off camera, where one of our main villains goes into the kitchen, and then you hear a loud bang, screams, and all kinds of things happening. And once we cut back into the living room, you see that there is Naomi Watts, who's hanging her head, and their child has just been murdered off screen. But right after that scene, then they go and they start trying to make their cell phones work to call for help. And of course they don't. The villains come back and everyone dies.
Player 1, level 2.
And that's essentially the movie. This movie is incredible. Not only is it amazingly well made, the cinematography is incredible, the directing is incredible, the acting is incredible, but it so flawlessly deconstructs an entire genre of filmmaking that I am absolutely dumbfounded by how perfectly it captures this genre and how easily it manipulates and makes fun of it. It's insane to me. And the TV remote scene, which I promised we'll talk about, is sort of the perfect encapsulation of that. What happens is,
not only will you be able to decide which one of you bites it first, but also, and I'm sure this is going to interest you even more, with which device. Whether it's the fast and almost painless big gun, or the slow, drawn-out... Look out! Where's the remote control? Where's the fucking remote control?
it hurts so bad because you made that wager where you say, I bet that this one of Naomi Watts will make it out okay, and she'll kill one of them and kill the other one much later in the film. You make that wager in your head, and then the film takes it away from you in one fell swoop, where it says, nope, we have all the control and you have nothing, and this family is going to die whether you like it or not, and we're both going to survive.
Ciao, Bella. Why? The deadline was 9, shit, almost another hour.
But this, combined with pretty much everything else that I've described, makes up Funny Games, and everything that it wants to say, everything that it stands for. It is one of the greatest meta deconstructions of a movie genre I've ever seen, and it may be the only one that does it this flawlessly. There are other deconstructions of genre movies like Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, Cabin in the Woods, movies like that, parodies essentially. They're hyper stylized parodies that go way over the top. They take cliches of genres and then just explode on them. They just make them way over the top, poking fun at them. But that's not what Funny Games does. Funny Games instead takes this approach where it pretends like it is one of these movies. It puts a mask on and says, oh, you like this kind of movie? Come watch this movie. And then about 45 minutes in, it takes it off and says, no, this is not what you wanted. It's simultaneously the most predictable and unpredictable movie ever. It's simultaneously the most shocking and least upsetting movie ever. It's one of the most bizarre movies out there, and yet everything it does is so hyper-calculated. This whole movie I could describe as hyper-calculated, and yet at the same time it doesn't feel like that at all. It's such a great movie, and I love it. I want more people to see it. I think more people should see it, and I think more people should put respect on its name. It's amazing. So check it out.
Wait a second.